right. Chapter 5, the first 2 years. So, as we progress throughout the semester, we will look at different age group categories, and for each age group, we will look at the three main domains: the biosocial first, the cognitive, and then the psychosocial. The biosocial domain, we're going to look at what happens in the physical changes to the human body, what kind of growth takes place in the outside, and what happens in the inside, what happens in the brain structure, for example, and how does nutrition affect that development. Cognitive development, we will look at the brain processes. So we will look at perception and memory and language, and we will look at different educational structures and how those contribute to learning. And finally, we'll look at psychosocial development, and this is where we examine emotions and temperament and social skills. And as we look at each and every one of those domains, we have to keep into consideration the concept of nature and nurture working together and affecting every area of development. So, starting with the first age category, 0 to 2, we're going to see a lot of changes happening in the first 2 years. From that newborn that is about the size of 7 pounds in weight and about 20 inches in height, that size is going to quadruple by the end of the first 2 years, and height will increase dramatically, and that infant is going to reach half of their adult height by the end of the second year. Usually, infants visit the pediatrician office monthly. At the beginning, they do the well checks where they do an assessment of weight and height and head circumference. Those are all indicators of how well the baby is developing. So, usually, the numbers are charted on a growth chart, one for boys, one for girls, to see the typical development. Typical development assesses the development of the infant in comparison to the norms. And norms are basically standards of development for an age group, and a child in this age group can rank at 0 to 100 percentile. The ranking is an indication of how many children in that age are above that child and how many children are below that. So let's say a child ranks in the 70th percentile for his height. That means that that child's height at this moment is he is taller than 70% of other infants and shorter than 30% of other infants. Of course, there's only one baby in 100 that is exactly at the 50th percentile. Why do we need to know those percentages? Well, the percentile is a good indicator of systematic and consistent growth. And if a doctor took down the numbers, let's say on the first checkup, and the next month the baby came with a drop in their percentile, in the height or in the weight or in the head circumference, then that could be an indication of a problem that they need to further investigate. Let's say the baby's weight dropped 20% or 30%, then that means that maybe the child is being malnourished or there is a problem in the absorption of the nutrients. Let's say there is an increase, a dramatic increase in the head circumference, then that is an indication that there is an abnormal growth in the brain. So these are all indicators, kind of red flags for the pediatrician to kind of assess the development of the infant. All right, if you've been around infants, you know that sleep is a big part of their life. Regular and ample sleep correlates with normal brain maturation and development. So you do want them to sleep. Unfortunately, if you've also been around children, you know that they don't sleep a lot at the beginning of their life. Some babies are colicky and they cry a lot. Some babies are calm and they spend most of their infancy in chunks of time sleeping. Newborns average about 15 to 17 hours of sleep per day. They take them in sometimes one, and if you're blessed, 3 to 4 hours segments. Infant sleep kind of alternates between two types: active sleep and quiet sleep. The active sleep is what we call REM, or rapid eye movement, and that indicates dreaming. And this is what kind of predominantly dictates their sleep cycle at the beginning of their life. They're about 80% active sleep and excuse me, and 20% quiet sleep. This gets reversed towards the next few months. So by 3 and 4 months, we're going to start to see more quiet sleep. And usually they reach about the close cycle of the adult, 90 minute alternating between active and quiet sleep, around 6 months of age or so. Of course, sleep problems are affected by the environment. So nature and nurture here work together. Firstborns usually sleep less because anytime they fidget or they make a noise, first time parents rush and are more anxious and worried, so they pick them up. The child gets conditioned at crying and getting picked up. By the second child or the third child, usually you're more prone to leave your child to cry it out a little bit, or stay a little bit longer until they comfort themselves or calm themselves back to sleep. So you're not as anxious as you are with your firstborn. Also, cow's milk tends to make babies' tummy full and gets them to sleep longer. Breastfed babies tend to wake up more often than bottle fed babies. So, as you can see, nurture has an effect on the sleep cycle just as much. All right, where do babies sleep? Well, co sleeping is a custom that allows parents to kind of share either a bed or a room with their babies. So, if they are co sleeping in the same bedroom, they can have the baby in a bassinet or in their own crib in the same room. However, if they are sharing the same bed, that is what we call bed sharing. Bed sharing is a good thing as far as nurture and as far as comfort for the mom, because if you're breastfeeding, you really don't need to move and get up. You just breastfeed in the bed. However, the problem with bed sharing is that incidence of SIDS is a little bit higher. There is that risk of the mom falling asleep and rolling over the baby, or the if the the partner or the dad is in the same bed, and if there is any potential for being drunk or oversleeping, they might actually suffocate the baby. So there are a lot of recommendations that around bed sharing, that having a bassinet or a crib in the bedroom is much better than actually sharing the same bed. Again, culture plays a big role on this. Some Asian and African cultures tend to be more into co-sleeping than European and North American cultures. African American and Asian cultures tend to value that connection and don't like that separation. Putting the baby in a different room is hard. Where European and North American cultures tend to value independence, and therefore training the baby to have their own independent room, their own independent bed, seems to be influencing their child rearing habits. All right, SIDS. What is SIDS? Basically, it is sudden infant death syndrome, and that is a situation where a seemingly healthy infant, usually around 2 to 6 months, this is the peak of that incidence, would suddenly stop breathing. Babies usually, are put to sleep at night, and then the mom comes in, checks on them in the morning, and finds the baby unfortunately dead in the crib. A scientist from Australia by the name of Susan Beale took it upon herself to research this particular phenomena and did a lot of investigation and interviews with parents of children that have suffered from SIDS, and tried to get a do her own observation and review of the data, and found that there was a very strong correlation between the infant's sleeping position and the incidence of SIDS. And that's what prompted her to recommend that children be put to sleep on their back rather than on their stomach. With the change of their sleeping position in 1 year, the recommendations of Susan Beale was taken by Department of Health in Holland, and they were able to reduce the incidence of SIDS by 40%. Of course, there are other factors that contribute to SIDS. It's not just the sleep position. It could very well be the birth weight of the baby, if there are smoking parents, of course, soft blankets or pillows or bed sharing, like we said. So there's a lot of other factors that could contribute to the sudden infant death. However, one of the major contributing factors that we are easily able to eliminate is the position of bed. And that's why there was a big campaign towards the time of the discovery of this connection in the United States to turn babies on their back in order to eliminate that hazard of sudden infant death syndrome.